Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another episode of Wacky Wednesday, a weekly series where I explore wacky deck ideas in both Standard and Modern, and this week we're taking a look at Blue-Red Wizards in Modern, an aggressive creature deck full of cheap instants and sorceries and a lot of prowess creatures to get pumped by all those instants and sorceries. So in fact we're also playing 4 copies of Wizard's Lightning, essentially a 1 mana Lightning Bolt as long as we control a wizard, which is of course very nice since Lightning Bolt is such a powerful and efficient card, so getting access to copies 5 through 8 is definitely worth it. So let's take a look at the entire deck list, starting out with our 1-drops, and of course the deck is filled with 1-drops. We have 4 copies of Opt as a cheap cantripping effect that lets us scry 1 and then draw a card at instant speed. And we also have 4 copies of Serum Visions, which lets us draw a card and then scry 2 at sorcery speed. So all these cantrips help us enable prowess and look for the missing cards, whether that's more lands or if we need to find some burn spells, or if we're low on creatures, maybe we want to find creatures instead. So those kind of help smooth out our draws. We also have 3 copies of Faithless Looting, which kind of looks out of place in this deck, since we're not really a graveyard combo deck of any sort, but since we are a very low curve deck and don't really want to flood out, we can operate perfectly with 3 mana in play. Faithless Looting kind of helps us smooth out our draw in the late game, get rid of access lands, and look for more action. And since it also has flashback, it also gives us multiple ways of enabling prowess for our creatures, which is also nice. And then in sideboarded games it can also help us dig for the sideboard cards more often and maybe get rid of excess sideboard cards that we don't need. For example, when we are bringing in Blood Moon, we don't need more than 1 copy, so the looting kind of helps us get rid of an additional copy that we might draw. Then we also have a single copy of Forked Bolt as an additional removal spell that we can also split up to deal 1 damage to 2 creatures. We also have 2 copies of Ghitu Lavarunner as our first creature, which is also Wizard from Dominaria, 1 mana for a 1/2 that gets +1/+0 as long as we have 2 or more instants and or sorcery cards in our graveyard, which is going to be pretty trivial in our deck. We also have 4 copies of Lava Spike as our first true burn spell, 1 mana to deal 3 damage to a player, so not as good as Lightning Bolt of course, but still pretty efficient. And if you're going to deal 3 damage to an opponent, then it doesn't really matter if it's Lava Spike or Lightning Bolt. Then we have, of course, the full 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, which is a great card and fits perfectly in our deck. Then we get to our creatures, where we have 4 copies of Monastery Swiftspear, which unfortunately is not a wizard, but is still too efficient not to include in our deck, as a 1 mana 1/2 with haste and prowess, which means she gets +1/+1 whenever we cast a non-creature spell until end of turn, which is a very powerful effect when you combine it with all these cheap cantrips and burn spells. And then we have 4 copies of Soul-Scar Mage, which is a 1 mana 1/2 with prowess as well. It is a wizard, so combines nicely with our Wizard's Lightning, and has an additional ability saying that if a source we control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature instead, which means we can permanently shrink down an opposing creature if we target it with one of our burn spells. Then we have 4 copies of Snapcaster Mage, which doesn't really need an introduction, and it is a wizard, so 2 mana 2/1 with flash. When it enters the battlefield we can give one of our spells flashback from the graveyard, where we get to recast it for some incremental advantage, so we kind of have to treat Snapcaster Mage as a 3-drop in this deck. And next up we have 4 copies of Stormchaser Mage, another wizard, 2 mana for a 1/3 with flying, haste and prowess, so the full package. And last but not least, 4 copies of Wizard's Lightning, which hopefully is only gonna cost 1 mana when we have a wizard in play to deal 3 damage to any target. Then our mana base is pretty straightforward. We have 4 copies of Spirebluff Canal, which enters battlefield untapped if it's one of our first 3 lands, but since we only have 18 lands, it's unlikely to enter the battlefield tapped. Then we also have 2 copies of Steam Vents, which is both an island and a mountain, which is important for our fetch lands, and enters the battlefield untapped if we're willing to pay 2 life. We also have some basic lands to go fetch, 2 mountains and 2 islands, and those islands are also important after sideboard when we bring in Blood Moon, which is why all our fetch lands in this deck are blue fetch lands, so 4 Flooded Strand and 4 Scalding Tarn, which can go get one of our basic lands or our Steam Vents. Then going over the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Grim Lavamancer, which is another powerful wizard that we can bring in against decks with a lot of cheap creatures that we can mow down with the Grim Lavamancer. We have 2 copies of Dispel against instants. We have 1 copy of Shattering Spree to deal with artifacts. We have a Spell Pierce as another cheap counterspell. 2 Abrades as both a spot removal spell or a way to deal with artifacts. An Echoing Truth to kind of catch weirdo permanents like enchantments, like Leyline of Sanctity, maybe a Worship that could be annoying. We have 2 copies of Pyroclasm against Go White decks, and all our prowess creatures will survive the 2 damage after they get the +1/+1 from prowess. We have a Roast to take care of bigger creatures like Tarmogoyfs or Gurmag Anglers. And then we have 3 copies of Blood Moon, which we can bring in against decks with greedy mana bases or lots of non-basic lands. Decks like Tron also get crippled by Blood Moon if we can follow it up with some pressure. And that's why we have the 2 basic islands and the 8 blue fetch lands to let us go get the basic islands, so we still have access to blue mana once the Blood Moon is in play. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand is acceptable. We've got our looting to maybe smooth out our draw, find some more early creatures. And we're up against turn 1 Temple of Malice, so that typically indicates Griselbrand, which is typically not a good matchup for burn strategies just because their opponent has Nourishing Shoal plus Worldspine Worm in their deck, which can gain them a ton of life out of nowhere. But the Stormchaser Mage was a nice draw. So our life total is somewhat relevant. If our opponent casts Through the Breach on Worldspine Worm, then if we're below 15 life, we can be dead on the spot. But I think we just have to fetch somewhat aggressively here just to smooth out our draw with the looting. I suppose we could just get a basic mountain here, since we have a ton of red cards in hand. And then we'll see if we need to get a Steam Vents or a basic island next turn. But for now I think I just cast a Faithless Looting. And alright, Soul-Scar Mage is good. Opt is okay as well, so definitely want to hang on to our second land. Might be okay to ditch the Snapcaster Mage, since we don't have a third land yet. And then, let's see, so next turn we want to go Stormchaser Mage, the turn after we want to go Soul-Scar Mage plus Opt. And then we want to start firing off all these lava spikes. So it's probably okay to just discard one of the lava spikes, I think. Hang on to the opts. Could also be that in this matchup, if it is the matchup I'm thinking about, then the Wizard Sliding doesn't have any upside over just lava spike, and we can just get rid of it in case they somehow have removal for our creatures. But Griselbrand typically doesn't have any main deck removal. And yep, there's a Night's Whisper, which is also typical for the deck, so far it looks like Griselbrand, which by the way also has a Blood Moon in the deck sometimes, so getting a basic island might be correct here regardless of preserving our life total. So yeah, let's get an island and play Stormchaser Mage. So we just want to be as fast as possible, since that's the only way we can try to outrace their combo. But it's gonna be a rough one. We also don't have a ton of graveyard hate in the sideboard that can really interact with our opponents, so it's all about racing, and if our opponent ever finds their Nourishing Shoals, they're gonna buy a ton of time. At least so far they're dealing quite a bit of damage to themselves with these Night's Whispers, so they're helping us out, but they are also seeing a lot of their deck. And there's another Temple of Malice. Opponent will have to discard 2 hand size, which might tell us a little bit about what they have in hand. And there goes a Worldspine Worm, so that either means they already have another Worldspine Worm in hand, or they don't have the Nourishing Shoal to go with it. At least they didn't discard the Griselbrand to hand size, since that would have been pretty scary, since then they could have cast a Gorgeous Vengeance on it next turn already. Alright, another Snapcaster is not ideal. Let's lead with Opt. And kind of want the third land here. And Ghitu Lavarunner is okay as well, I suppose, better than Soul-Scar Mage on this turn. But if we take the Lavarunner, then we're kind of giving up on these 2 Snapcaster Mages, since it's gonna take us a while before we find a third land. And if we're giving up on double Snapcaster Mage, then half of our hands is not as effective as it could be, so it's probably worth bottoming still, even though it does deal more damage this turn. It's close, but I think we bottom and find a Serum Visions. That's okay for next turn. Lets us use our blue mana, play Soul-Scar Mage, and then hit for 2. So next turn we might be able to deal some damage. but we might also be dead. We'll see. Dealing as much damage early as possible is also relevant in case your opponent starts paying 7 life to Griselbrand. And if your opponent has a Simian Spirit Guide, they could already through the breach something here as well. Instead it's a Cathartic Reunion, discarding Borborygmos, but they could have the Glorious Vengeance to get it back now. And Borborygmos does hit pretty hard, even if they just get it for 1 turn. They can take out both our creatures and have a 7 power Trampler attacking. And yep, there's a Glorious Vengeance. Let's see how many lands they have. Definitely just taking it here. Opponent reveals 3 cards from Borborygmos, but they did not find any lands, so that's lucky for us. And you can also see the Nourishing Shoal I was talking about. So at least that's 1 Nourishing Shoal they don't have in hand. So now the opponent is gonna throw 1 land at the Stormchaser Mage and call it a day, so not willing to take out the Soul-Scar Mage quite yet. Alright, so we get to untap. I think it's pretty straightforward here, just play Swiftspear, play Serum Visions, look for an additional red source. So we can also cast these lava spikes. Alright, there's a land, and bottom Steam Vents, probably top Lightning Bolt, and then take 2. And then I guess we might as well Wizard's Lightning, since I don't think the instant speed matters and they could somehow kill our creatures, in which case the lightning is gonna cost us more mana. Get in for 6. And put the opponent dead next turn. I suppose the upside of using Lava Spike is that we get to use a Wizard's Lightning at instant speed if we get to untap, if our opponent somehow would want to go off in our upkeep, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So definitely could die here, or our opponent could just have a Nourishing Shoal to stay alive for a couple more turns. And yep, there's a Through the Breach, which if it reveals a Worldspine Worm, we're dead. Instead it's another Borborygmos, which I imagine our opponent has a land to throw at our face. And let's see if they revealed any lands this time around. They did. So they can just chuck a Blackleaf Glyphs at our face and call it a day. Alright, so unsurprisingly lost to the Griselbrand deck here. So what do we get to bring in? Dispel is pretty good. Spell Pierce I like. And Echoing Truth could also do some stuff. Blood Moon doesn't do much since they play Blood Moon themselves most of the time. Just have to try and be fast and maybe disrupt them at a key turn. What do we want to take out? Don't mind shaving some number of Snapcaster Mages. This game isn't about grinding value, it's about being as fast as possible, and Snapcaster is a bit slow. Could also see just taking out a Stormchaser Mage just because it's not the fastest creature to get on the board. Could consider Echoing Truth, but it doesn't really do what we want it to do, I think. But maybe it's still better than one of our other cards. I think I'll cut another Stormchaser, try it like this. So with the Echoing Truth we could bounce one of their creatures after they reanimate it, so they can't hit us with a Griselbrand to gain 7 life, for example. And this hand is not amazing. Need to find a red mana, but at least we have Island to cast the Serum Visions without taking any damage. I'll keep. Serum Visions often enough finds you the second land you need, and this hand does have the tools to get there if we can find red mana right away. Alright, so we drew another Soul-Scar, don't want the Lightning Bolt and have to keep the Opt, which is better than a random draw in this scenario, since we're not going to use the blue mana anyways. Alright, so could be in trouble here if the Opt does not find us a red source. If it does, then we're probably still okay. So let's cast Opt, and yep, we'll keep that. And then play a Soul-Scar Mage, say go. So the basic island again not being the best here, since it doesn't let us cast double Soul-Scar Mage next turn. Could also decide to just play a Snapcaster Mage, but we'll see. Alright, Serum Visions makes it easier, so play Serum Visions. Would not mind a third land. Find a Wizard's Lightning and then Bolt and Swiftspear. I think we bottom both. And then attack for 2. And then play another Soul-Scar. Alright, there's a Scalding Tarn. So that's pretty good, can get us a mountain. And then we have some interesting choices. Opponent could also have brought in something like a Pyroclasm, in which case running out Soul-Scar Mage without keeping up instant speed interaction like a Lightning Bolt means the Pyroclasm would kill all of our creatures, so it might be worth it to just play one of our bolts here, or this turn just use a Snapcaster instead. So what we could do is play one Soul-Scar Mage, and then not enable Prowess yet this turn, and then end of turn run out Snapcaster Mage with no value. But if they do somehow have Pyroclasm, then we get to just bolt their face to enable Prowess and save our Soul-Scar Mages. I think that makes sense. We do give up on a little bit of Snapcaster value, but the upside is that we get to deal more damage in the long term with the extra Soul-Scar Mage we play here. So I'll say go. Alright, opponent passes. So I'll flash in a Snapcaster Mage. Untap. And a Ghitu Lavarunner. So here, it's lightning our opponents. Trigger Soul-Scar Mage a bunch of times. So we could kill our opponent here if they don't have anything. And it's probably worth it to go for it. Force them to have the Nourishing Shoal to stay alive. Alright, and they die. So they did not have the Nourishing Shoal, so on to game 3. Where I don't think we want to change anything. So our opponent didn't really do much that game. And this hand is quite good. 3 lands is just about right, and then 2 threats, some interaction, and a cantrip to enable Prowess and find some more burn spells. And our opponent with the turn 1 looting. I don't want to see a Gristlebrand discarded, otherwise that's going to kind of force us to keep up Dispel at all times to counter Gorya's Vengeance, which is going to slow us down quite a bit. And instead we see a Bontu's Last Reckoning. Alright, so that's their sweeper of choice nowadays. Just gonna run out this Swiftspear, get in for 1. And then next turn run out Soul-Scar Mage. Probably cast the Serum Visions. And then turn after we can play Looting, discarding maybe a land. Alright, another looting from the opponent. So let's see if now a legendary creature makes an appearance in the graveyard. Yep, there's Borborygmos. So that's kinda gonna force us to maybe keep up Dispel. So run out Soul-Scar Mage. Attack for 1. And say go. And next turn we can play the island. Play Serum Visions and Looting and still keep up Dispel, so it's not the end of the world, but it would have been better if we were able to cast the Serum Visions here, and then next turn have additional mana to do other things. But if our opponent just has a Gorya's Vengeance here, they get to destroy us, so I think keeping up Dispel might be necessary. Alright, Engineered Explosives on 1 instead. Yeah, that's also a way to kill our creatures and relieve the pressure, but looks like they don't have the 3rd land yet, so that worked out. So not gonna run out the other Soul-Scar Mage, but we will try and deal some damage here with our Serum Visions. And yeah, I can probably use another Swiftspear here if we're gonna lose the one we have in play, and then cast a Looting. And then don't need the Spirebluff. And probably don't need the other Looting. And then get in there for 6. Could go for the Wizard's Lining, and that would deal, let's see, 8, 11 to our opponent, but I think we, again, probably are better off keeping up Dispel in case they go for a Gorya's Vengeance. Alright, so opponent's gonna keep up their explosives. We'll attack, opponent's gonna crack their explosives. Yep, that works. And then we'll play another Soul-Scar Mage and a Swiftspear. And I think we hold on to the Flooded Strand to maybe discard to the Faithless Looting flashback. It does mean that we can't respond to a Pyroclasm with Wizard's Lightning to enable Prowess, so that's the downside of not playing the Flooded Strand here. But if they had the Engineer Explosives, I doubt they'll also have Pyroclasm. Alright, Cathartic Reunion, discarding Worldspine Worm, also getting rid of a Through the Breach, so they might already have a Through the Breach in hand. Bonus fetching, so we will see some more from the opponent here. And yep, there's a Glorious Vengeance on Borborygmos. I guess just casting Faithless Looting and then playing the Wizard Sliding is also good enough if they don't have the Nourishing Shoal. So I'm gonna go for it here. Draw 2. Get a Steam Vents. And if they have Nourishing Shoal plus a green card, then we get to keep playing. But then their opponent's going to be almost empty-handed. If they don't have it, then they're dead. Alright, looks like we got there. So close game against Grishelbrand, but managed to get there in 3 games. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand looks okay. Don't have a 1-drop creature, which is unfortunate, but don't think we can mulligan this hand. Alright, turn 1 Swamp. Into Gravecrawler, so some sort of black aggro deck. Alright, Gravecrawler is definitely annoying. So let's play Flooded Strand and say go. Don't think we'll be lightning bolting the Gravecrawler. Flooded Strand probably just going to get us a tapped Steam Vents, and then Scalding Tarn leaves us with the option of both getting an island or a mountain. Alright, Bloodsoaked Champion into another Gravecrawler, so our opponent's got a great start here with triple 1-drop creature. Might have to play defense with our Stormchaser Mages, which may or may not work out. So killing the Bloodsoaked Champion isn't great for us. Killing Gravecrawler also isn't great given that they have another zombie. So we'll take 2 and then fetch for 1 a tapped Steam Vents here. Alright, Spirebluff means we don't have to take any damage here. And I'll play a Stormchaser Mage and keep it on defense, since I don't think getting in for 1 outweighs possibly preventing 6 damage. Although I imagine our opponent's going to have a removal spell here to clear a path. Still have to try. And next turn we can do the same. And Dread Wanderer. So another 1 mana 2/1. And that's also another zombie, so blocking Gravecrawler and killing 1 is still going to let them recast the Gravecrawlers. So I think we'll block the Bloodsoaked Champion, which at least costs 2 mana to return instead of just 1. And they have Supernatural Stamina as well as a pump spell to make their Bloodsoaked Champion survive. So we'll take 4, and our opponent now has 8 power in play on turn 3, which is not great. The 2/1s definitely outrace our Lightning Bolts currently. So I think we still have to just play another Stormchaser, play defense, and now we might be at the point where we have to point our burn spells at their creatures, which is not where we want to be. Night Market Lookout, another virtual 1 mana 2/1. And everyone gets in there. So here we might be better off blocking the Dread Wanderer, which costs 3 mana to return, as opposed to 2 mana for the Bloodsoaked Champion. We could also just Lightning Bolt the Bloodsoaked Champion, so we only take 4. I think that makes sense, but it's on the opponents to make a move first in case they have another stamina, which they do. Alright, I guess we'll just kill the Dread Wanderer then. Since the prowess trigger alone isn't enough to make the Stormchaser Mage survive, since the Dread Wanderer is still going to have 4 power, and we kind of need the Stormchaser Mage on defense. Alright, so we get to untap another Stormchaser. Still don't think we're at a point where we can start attacking. We could go Lightning Bolt Gravecrawler, Snapcaster Lightning Bolt, get rid of all their zombies so they can't replay them, and then sneak in an attack with the Stormchaser Mage. Although ideally we would want the Stormchaser in play, the second Stormchaser, when we start casting all these Lightning Bolts, but I guess we would still have 1 in hand, which is reasonable. So yeah, I think I like that line. So we'll be fetching a mountain, and then we can go Snapcaster Mage, on the Wizard's Lightning, kill the Gravecrawler, enable Prowess, and then Wizard's Lightning, the other Gravecrawler, enable Prowess again, and get a hit in with the Stormchaser Mage, since at some point we need to start attacking, since giving the opponent infinite time just lets them recast all their Gravecrawlers out of the graveyard, so this seems okay. Our best card here would probably be Forked Bolt, just because it can take out 2 1-toughness creatures at once. There's land number 3, opponent can get back Dread Wanderer now. Instead, a Mardu Shadow Spear with Dash. Alright. Everyone gets in there, so we lose a life to the Lookout, we lose a life to the Shadow Spear, so we're already down to 4. But we can choose which creature to block here. If we block the Lookout, that's the one that also gains the opponent a life, so it's probably just better than blocking the Shadow Spear here. Could prevent more damage by blocking the champion, but then we take more damage next turn, so I think we block the Lookout here. And then take 3 down to 1. Opponent is empty-handed. But we have to kill the Shadow Spear next turn, otherwise we would take 1 damage and die. So play Stormchaser, cast Opt. And there's a Lava Spike, which is probably worth keeping. Can only afford to attack with one of our Stormchaser Mages here, since the other one has to block the Bloodsoaked Champion. And then the Lightning Bolt has to take care of the Shadow Spear. And our opponent drew another Night Market Lookout, which also has to get killed, otherwise we're dead. So that gets dashed. Have to bolt this. And our opponent simply doesn't have to attack with the Bloodsoaked Champion, which also puts us in a bit of trouble here. So yeah, this game didn't go according to plan. Opponent kind of had too fast of a draw, and we weren't able to control their threats in time. So if this is not a removal spell, we're dead. And I don't think we'll be able to deal 16 damage to our opponent here. So let's opt and hope for the best. Island goes to the bottom. And we find a Swiftspear, which is not going to do it here. So we can play Swiftspear and then cast Lava Spike. But that's not going to be enough. And if we just pass a turn, our opponent just attacks with the Lookout and we're dead, so... Still got pretty close here, being able to deal 8 damage, put our opponent to 5. But yeah. Let's move on to the next game. Alright, we do have some good sideboard cards to bring in this matchup. 2 copies of Pyroclasm are great. Could also consider Echoing Truth, but probably not. And then Grim Lavamancer I like. Could also consider the Abrades as more spot removal, but it is 2 mana to kill a 1 mana creature, which isn't where we want to be. And then what do we take out? Don't think we have time for Faithless Looting in this matchup necessarily, so I'll take out at least 2 copies. Maybe taking out Lava Spike makes sense as well, just because the opponent is going to be the aggressor in this matchup most of the time, even though that might be different if we're on the play. But we want to kind of control the board, so Burn Spell that can't deal with their creatures might not be where we want to be in the matchup. But I think I like this configuration, would like to be on the play, and yeah, this hand looks keepable. Snapcaster Mages to get some value, and then this time we have the 1-drop creatures to get out of the gates a little faster. So have to take some damage here from our Flooded Strand, but that's okay, and lead with a Swiftspear. Alright, there's a Gravecrawler. Pyroclasm, alright, that's a plan. So let's attack with our Swiftspear, and then play our Soul-Scar. And if our opponent goes double 1-drop, I think I'm okay just playing the Pyroclasm right away. And not get too greedy, since our opponent could also be playing some discard spells. And there's a Tormented Hero. Another 1 mana 2/1. And the Gravecrawler does get in there. We'll take it. And they might still play another creature second main. Or they might keep up some 1 mana interaction. Alright, they run out the Bloodsoaked Champion, so this Pyroclasm is looking great. And yeah, I'm just not gonna waste any time here. Let's Pyroclasm, enable Prowess. Our creatures live to tell the tale, and our opponent's creatures are gone. And we get to hit them for 4, while our opponent needs to rebuild their board. This basic island isn't really doing us any favors right now, not letting us cast our 2 1-drops in the same turn, but I think we'll still be fine. Mardu Shadow Spear on defense. Alright, Serum Visions was excellent here. Lets us enable Prowess, maybe look for a 3rd land. And use up all our mana. Alright, we found a land. And I think we can bottom both, since we're probably going to fetch anyways here with the Flooded Strand. So let's play the Lava Spike targeting our opponents. And then go to combat, attack. Opponent might have a Fatal Push or the Stamina after blocks, but yeah, Stamina on their creature. So that's gonna make it a 3-power creature on blocks. Could just let that happen, or we can bolt it in response. Don't mind bolting it here. So this time we had a pretty strong draw. So bolting it is going to get rid of it and give us some more prowess triggers. And then next turn Snapcaster Bolt should be able to close out the game. Ooh, Surgical Extraction on Lightning Bolt. Still don't really mind. Sure, it kind of shuts down our Snapcaster somewhat, but we can still just target Lava Spike. Opponent does get some valuable information, how we sideboarded. So they get to see our Pyroclasms and our Grim Lavamancers, but it's not like they can really do much about it. Alright, opponent's at 1. They know we have double Snapcaster in hand, so they're gonna scoop it up. So time for game 3. Do we change anything on the draw now? I don't think we do. Don't think we want Dispel necessarily, even though it can counter some key spells. Yeah, I think we just run it back and hope to draw a Pyroclasm at the right time again, since that was definitely what won us the game. A Grim Lavamancer could also do some work. Alright, how about this hand? Don't think we want to keep a 4-lander with no interaction whatsoever. So I'll go to 6. Alright, we've got our Grim Lavamancer, I suppose. Still not a great hand with no actual spells, but I think we have to keep the 6 and bottom the land. Our opponent might also play a bit more cautiously, knowing about Pyroclasm, so they might not go all in right away, which might benefit us since we don't have the Pyroclasm this time around. And our opponent with Tormod's Crypt, so they really went with the Graveyard Hate plan, which I don't know if I agree with, but it is gonna kind of slow down our Grim Lavamancer, so it's gonna do something at least. So let's run out the Steam Vents, take 2, and I think we want to lead with the Ghitu Lavarunner and then just trade it for the opposing 1-drop. Alright, Gravecrawler into Night Market Lookout. And I will just take the trade here. Opponent also attempted to trade maybe because we do have Pyroclasm, so their creatures might not stay in play forever. Here I just like running out a Stormchaser Mage. And I think we still play the island just to preserve our life total, in case we find another red source that's not Flooded Strand. And then play defense with our mage. Alright, Bloodsoaked Champion. And no attacks, that's good. And a Serum Visions to draw. Alright, so we have some decisions to make here. So we could Serum Visions, attack with our Stormchaser Mage, and play another one. Then we probably want to fetch first before casting the Serum Visions. Could also run out the Grim Lavamancer, force our opponent to sacrifice the Tormod's Crypt right away. But in that case, we don't really want to both fetch the Flood Strand and cast Serum Visions, because then we put a third card in the graveyard, which we don't need for Lavamancer, but that's going to get exiled by the Tormod scripts, potentially. So in that case, I would rather go Grim Lavamancer plus Stormchaser Mage and not play the Serum Visions, which I guess is also reasonable. So I think I'll attack for 1, and it also kind of works out better for the prowess triggers for the Stormchaser Mages. We'll have to take some damage from the Flooded Strand since we need another red source. So this is where maybe running a split of something like Wooded Foothills as an extra red fetch land as opposed to all Flooded Strands could pay off, but that would make our sideboarded Blood Moons a bit weaker as well, since we would be less likely to find Island. Run out Lavamancer, say go. And this might prompt our opponent to use the Tormod script before we get to untap, but then casting Serum Visions will give us an extra card in the graveyard. Opponent with 4 lands, which I assume is a bit much for their deck, and they get in there with everyone. Think we just want to block the Lookout with the Stormchaser Mage. Don't have a removal spell in hand to punish them for playing the Stamina here, so I think it's okay to just accept the trade. And I think the Lookout's the most annoying one, if it can keep getting in there. So I'll block like this, and it looks like they have a Virulent Swipe. So +2/+0 and Death Touch on our turn, and has Rebound. Alright, opponent just pushing through some damage. But we can just use the Lavamancer on the rebounded creature if we want to, unless the opponent sacks the Tormod script. Alright, opponent lets us draw. So I don't think there's a reason to use the Lavamancer right now. Can just wait for a rebound spell, and if our opponent does sack the Tormod script before the rebound happens, then sure, I'll just kill the Gravecrawler, I guess, or the Bloodsoaked. But for now, I think we just want to enable prowess a bunch. So cast Serum Visions. And Forked Bolt is exactly what we're looking for, so bottom Soul-Scar Mage, top the Forked Bolt. And then probably going to keep the land in hand to discard to the Faithless Looting. I guess we could Looting right now as well. The problem there is that if we Looting, we're putting even more cards in the graveyard for the Tormod script to exile, so we might be better off playing it slow. Although we would get to hit their opponent for quite a bunch with our Stormchaser Mages. So this is a close one. I guess I'm okay casting the Looting anyways here. Flooded Strand can't get red mana, so I don't think we want it here. And then I'll discard the Soul-Scar Mage as well. Hang on to Opt plus Forked Bolt. And then get in there for 6. And then we'll see what our opponent does with their Tormod script. Alright, they're gonna sack it right now, so probably just want to use the Grim Lavamancer on the Gravecrawler, here's my guess, instead of the Forked Bolt. And then our opponent will get to hit us for 4 with the Bloodsoaked Champion, but I think we can manage. Kill Gravecrawler. Exile 2 cards, doesn't matter. So this way our opponent gets to use their Rebound spell still. The other option we had was to use Forked Bolt and kill both creatures. The downside of that play is that we miss out on the prowess triggers and we miss out on the Grim Lavamancer activation. And we want to kill the Gravecrawler since that one they can't get back unless they find a zombie, while the Bloodsoaked Champion they can get back with any creature attacking to enable raid. So far so good, we're down to 4, but this Forked Bolt is going to be huge. Alright, and a Snapcaster, so we can opt to enable prowess. And then we have both Forked Bolt and a Grim Lavamancer activation at the ready. I'll take the Serum Visions. And I'll actually just cast the Serum Visions here, I think. Enable prowess again. Can't quite go for lethal, but our opponent is just gonna pack it in. So yeah, just Serum Visions being an extra spell in the graveyard for Lavamancer is enough to prompt a concession. Didn't even need to show them the Forked Bolt here. Alright, so managed to beat a mono black aggro. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand is a bit dubious. A single land. No wizards that we can play on turn 1, so this may take a while to cost 1 mana, but we do have a nice burn hand of sorts. I think I'm okay keeping this. As opposed to the classic burn deck, we do have a bunch of cantrips to smooth out our draw and maybe find a second land as well, so take 2. And run out the Swiftspear. If our opponent kills Swiftspear right away, then things are looking a bit rough for us, since then we just have 12 points of burn with no auto pressure. Turn 1 islands. Typically means our Swiftspear will get to connect. So let's Lava Spike and deal 5. Second Snapcaster Mage, not a great draw. Oof, Vapor Snag, one of the few 1 mana interactive spells in blue that they could have had. Not a card you see very often. So opponent could be on Merfolk or some sort of brew. If the opponent didn't play anything here, they're probably not Merfolk. Alright, and Mountain's a nice draw. Let's try again. Lava Spike. Is this gonna get countered? Nope, opponent with a Visions of Beyond in response to draw a card. So, still not sure what they're up to. Alright, let's see if they have another Vapor Snag. They do. Okay, I mean, Vapor Snag does buy them some time, but it is card disadvantage in a way. And Swiftspear is a pretty easy one to recast for 1 mana. It's not like we were doing anything else with our spare mana here. So yeah, let's run it back. This time we might looting instead of casting a bolt. Opponent might respond with their own removal spell instead of mana leak, that's fine. I would have liked for the looting to resolve, but it's not too devastating for it to get countered. Get in for 2. Opponent down to 11. So opponent maybe some sort of blue-red Delver deck, similar to what we're trying to do. And Jace's Archivist. Alright, I guess now the Vapor Snags make a little bit more sense. But we're just gonna Lightning Bolt that thing. Don't have a Lightning Bolt in the graveyard, so can't go Snapcaster plus Lightning Bolt. Could just cast a Wizard's Lightning for 3 mana. Or we could Lightning Bolt and then just play out a Snapcaster Mage without any value. Wizard's Lightning for 3 mana also looks pretty appealing, just to use up all our mana. The downside is that if our opponent somehow can interact for 1 mana, then we won't have used every single card in our hand before the Archivist gets activated, and we kind of waste the card in a way. But looks like the Lightning is good to go. Get in for 2. Opponent down to 9. And we have double Snapcaster plus Bolt in hand, which are pretty great. So I like our position, but I'm a little bit nervous about what the opponent could do. Jace's Archivist is not a card you see very often in Modern. Alright, Devastating Tide of a Miracle. That's acceptable. Yep, so normally it costs 5 mana to return all non-land permanents, but since they miracled it, it only costs them 2. But yeah, that's another bounce spell that kind of is a card disadvantage in a way. Run out Swiftspear, and I'm okay just bolting our opponent here. Use up our mana, get in some extra points if this works. It does. And then play the Spirebluff, say go. Despite looting being in the graveyard, I think we can probably use all 4 mana, since if we draw 1-drop next turn we can Snapcaster, flash something back and play the 1-drop. Jace, Memory Adapt. So is their opponent gonna try and mill us for 10? Is that their game plan? Right, now they're just gonna draw a card. So yeah, I guess our opponent is just a weird blue-red mill deck maybe. We'll try and kill our opponent here. Play Snapcaster. Target Lava Spike. And if they don't interact, they're dead. Let's get in there. Attack our opponents. No need to cast a looting before attacking here. Alright, they had the Vapor Snag. So now we get to replay the Swiftspear. Suppose we could have also attacked our opponent first with the Swiftspear and then cast a Snapcaster Mage in case our opponent did not cast Vapor Snag on Swiftspear right away, then they would have died to the Lava Spike. So I guess maybe that was a mistake on our part, but alright, opponent does not find what they were looking for and they scoop it up. So blue-red, they had some control cards, but mostly bounce spells. I don't think Blood Moon is going to be too effective. Opponent did have some basics. Spell Pierce might be okay against their Planeswalkers and their interactive spells. Not sure about Dispel. since some of their cards were planeswalkers and sorceries that we couldn't counter, but they might also have some removal spells after sideboard that they bring in. Yeah, I mean, I think Spell Pierce is the only clear card we want to bring in, and then I'll have to see more from the opponent's deck before making any other changes. And what do we take out? Can probably cut a Looting if our opponent's trying to mill us. Then I guess Looting could be bad. Alright, let's try this. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand looks okay. Some creatures, some interaction, and then some cantripping to enable prowess as well. So turn 1 Soul-Scar Mage, turn 2 Soul-Scar Mage plus Serum Visions. Could even run out Scalding Tarn and play 2 red spells. We'll see. Thought Scour, opponent targets us. Mills over a Looting. So yeah, it definitely looks like they're trying to put some number of cards in our graveyard. Maybe they have some Jace's Phantasms to go with their 1 mana draw 3 if there's 20 or more cards in the graveyard. I think we just play a Serum Visions. Now that we drew the second Serum Visions, we will get to use our blue mana in a useful way next turn. So I don't mind just playing the island over fetching with Scalding Tarn. Pick up another Soul-Scar Mage. Lava Spike is okay. So is Stormchaser Mage. Top the Lava Spike and then top Stormchaser on top of that. In case they do play a sweeper here, then we want to be able to have the creature next turn. So get in for 2. If your opponent were to bolt or Soul-Scar Mage, we can respond with our own bolt to enable prowess. And then the Soul-Scar Mage survives. Instead it's a Vapor Snag. Alright, maybe should have seen that coming and therefore not kept Stormchaser Mage on top, since now we're going to get clogged with creatures that their opponent's going to keep bouncing. But at least the Stormchaser has haste. Let's lead with the Stormchaser Mage, see if it gets countered. It does. Attack for 1. And then play another Soul-Scar Mage. And I think we just get a Steam Vents here. We might need double blue or double red. If we maybe draw a Snapcaster Mage or something. And doesn't look like our life total is under a ton of pressure from the opponent, so can probably afford to take 2. Pass a turn, see what they have. 4 mana. And they're gonna pass. Alright, definitely don't mind leading with the Serum Visions. And draw a Swiftspear, pick up Lava Spike, which I don't mind. Bottom the Spirebluff. And we could just go Swiftspear into bolt our opponents, which seems okay. Alright, they're gonna mana leak the Swiftspear. Can't pay for it. And yeah, I'll just bolt our opponents. Could also just attack, see what happens first. There's a small window where our opponent might just cast Vapor Snag before we have to commit to a Lightning Bolt. Alright, now we are kind of forced to use the Bolt. The problem here is that if they have another Vapor Snag, then maybe I prefer just dealing 2 damage and then replaying another Soul-Scar Mage. But it looks like they're out of Vapor Snags, so opponent down to 10. We have a Lava Spike on top, which can deal lethal combined with the Lightning Bolt and the 2 Soul-Scar Mages. Ooh, Reforge the Soul. That's a Wheel of Fortune with Miracle. And our opponent's gonna cast it. Alright. Get to draw 7 cards. Not the best 7, but not the worst either. So I guess that also kind of explains all the bounce spells. If you're gonna Wheel of Fortune, then Vapor Snag is just as good as a Terminate, or even better. But against a burn-heavy deck, making us draw 7 is not where the opponent wants to be. So next turn we can Stormchaser Mage, Lava Spike, plus Opt or Looting. But I imagine they'll have some interaction now. Alright, Thought Scour targets us. Plenty of food for a potential Snapcaster Mage. And our opponent scoops it up. Alright, so I'm not entirely sure what our opponent's win condition is. Maybe they have some Jace's Phantasms, which could be 1 mana 5/5s. Those seem like pretty nice win conditions. But even with the Soul-Scar Mages, we could have maybe found a Lightning Bolt to shrink them down and keep them in check, so I think we were still doing fine. Alright, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached we will release an additional weekly series, so if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.